meet all of you. I'm so glad to be here. This is a topic that's tricky. It's also tricky to teach it. But I am giving you handouts that I hope are going to be useful. We'll talk it through. Feel free to ask questions as we go through this. And if in the end you still have more questions or you want copies of the slides, you can just let us know and we'll make sure that you get those. Okay. But for now, I have given you two handouts. One is a handout that I wrote to teach this topic to a bunch of lawyers and HR people a couple weeks ago. And actually it started out, let me just say, it started out as a spreadsheet because I, like many of us, was not paying attention to what the Minnesota legislature was doing. I mean, I have been trained not to pay any attention to them until the last week in May, right? And so on June 1st, I pulled up to see what they did, and I went into shock because I represent small and medium-sized businesses, and I identified with their problems. And so the legislature, in my opinion, went nuts this year, and they really passed a lot of employment laws, made a lot of changes that I think were not, they're individual laws that they passed where individual legislators probably thought they were a great idea. A lot of them are, I've seen them in other states too, but when you combine them as a group, they are burdensome. And so what I want to do is make sure that you know which ones apply to you, how those apply, why I think this is a problem. I mean, I think that's my reason for being here today, is to make sure that you get that information. And so I started out, and of course, after I went into shock and saw these laws, I made a big spreadsheet and I sent it to all my clients. And everybody had that, and one of the clients happens to be the company that puts on these seminars for lawyers. So they grabbed right onto it and they said, can we make it into a summary guide? And that's why this has been printed. So it's easier to read than my spreadsheet, but that's the reason why you have it. And we'll be talking about that as we go along. And the other handout that's in the middle of it there is one of the slides. It is really important. I think you should have a copy of it instead of just seeing it up on here on the slides, and that's why I handed you that today. So, but I'm very interested in what your comments are and your questions are and what you're thinking about how all of this might work. I imagine all of you have been to some seminars about some types of new time off, right? But in terms of coordinating them all together, that's where I'm at. And so I'm going back and forth here because I'm shorter than the podium, so I'm going to be walking around. And so let me get my slides going. So first of all, major changes. Two new types of laws that were, leave laws have been added. The biggest change, though, is that until this year, only one law in Minnesota required employers to offer time off to anybody, the parenting leave statute. And that parenting leave statute starts at employers that have 21 employees. It does not apply to anybody with fewer than 21 employees. All of the new laws apply to every single employer in Minnesota. If you have one employee, your employee might be taking these types of time off because they're available to everyone. And that is a big change, huge, and it's the reason why I think all employers need to be, tuned in here. So the previous one was only parenting law. Other types of time, that has been since 1987, by the way. There are two other federal laws that have required paid time off, or not paid time off, just leave time. Those are for bigger employers too. So the bottom line is that the federal government's laws now are more protective of small businesses than the state laws are, and which I think is astounding, but it's true. So as I said before, the greatest impact on these is the laws in the aggregate, the types of time off in the aggregate, and that's what the handouts are about. So today what we're going to do is we're going to look at the elements of the types of time off. So who's eligible for them? And what is the length of the leave they can take? When can they take it? Is it paid leave or not? And what are the uses of the leave that they can take? So one of the tricks of the trade here is going to be to understand the uses that these various types of time off can be used for. They're all basically family and medical type leaves. But when you get into the nitty-gritty, some cover more things than others. The one that's going to be effective January 1st of 24 is extremely broad, covers the universe of people you could think of that could ever conceivably be in your family, and covers all sorts of other types of needs for leave. And so we need to look at that, and you are going to be needing to figure out how that corresponds with your paid time off that you already offer. So paid time off is not regulated. Paid time off is up to you, but you already offer it. And I'll tell you, I think the biggest problem everybody's going to have here is staffing. I don't think it's pay, I think it's staffing. I mean, what are you going to do if 4 people are gone at once and have the perfect legal right to be? That's a problem. You can't staff up for that. And frankly, that staffing issue is the reason why in the past, the required time off for parenting only applied to 21 employees, right? And it's the reason why, if you read the legislative history of the Family and Medical Leave Act, which has always been my least favorite law, it's starting to really creep up though, and I'm starting to actually be favorable towards it, because it doesn't apply until you have at least 50 employees in a 75-mile radius. And so the point of that law, if you read the background on it, is that they were thinking, okay, how will these employers actually do this? What if they have a bunch of people eligible for this leave? They're all gone, then who's going to fill in? If you're too small, you don't have that fill-in person. And that's what I'm worried about, one of the main things I'm worried about here now. But we can talk about that more. But that is the overview of what I want to talk about today. The guts of it is, what are the characteristics of the types of leave and what the overlap situation is and when they all apply and whether they do actually all apply to you. I mean, in the past I used to say, okay, now you need to think, does this apply to you or not? I don't have to say that now since they all apply to everybody. So going right to that topic, they all apply to every employee and every employer. As you might remember from the parenting leave statute, that only applied to employers of 21, employees that worked there at least a year and were working half-time. So employees that were taking this leave already were integrated into your workplace. They already were trained. They are not newbies. They're not coming in and then going out on leave immediately or anything like that. And the same is true of the Federal Family and Medical Leave Act. That has to be a year of employment. And over again, I've seen the benefit to employers of having that situation. But that's not the case with these new laws. There's one that's not effective until January 1st, 2026, although it's creeping its way in, and I will talk about that. The rest are all effective either now or on January 1st of 2024. And the uses are all family and medical. We'll look at those in more detail. And they overlap the federal and the employer PTO. So that's why I say, we do have these laws. We have requirements for you. You have PTO that's not regulated. You can do whatever you want with it, but you are going to have to figure out how they match up. Because you can't be doing it for one person, not for another. You have to have consistency, etc. I'm not sure why I'm so hoarse here. Mm-hmm.
Can you clarify that in the overlap with PTO? So if a company is currently accruing vacation from day one and they accrue over 48 hours in a year, do we technically already comply with that rule?
Yeah, and I have a special page on that exact topic. The Department of Labor just changed their mind a few days ago about that. And so I'll show you on their website. So, the next thing I want to do is look at the handouts, because I think that's where you're going to see the guts of what you're here to learn about and want to learn about. And here's one, so this is a handout. You can see why it's a handout. So this is an overview of all of the laws, when they kick in, what they cover, who they cover, and how they compare to what we used to have. And I wanted you to see this, and then for details, we can look here, because this summary guide does have all the details that you would need. And so you can look in the summary guide, and we will, to look at, for example, what types of leave there are, and who they cover, whether pay is required, whether they overlap, etc. But just for the moment, let's look at this. I made this overview because I personally need to think about things in the chart format. And I knew that everybody was going to be wondering how these would stack up. So I wanted you to see, this is used in the years 23 and 24, but it could apply to any number of years. So take the top leave, parenting leave. Parenting leave is the leave we're used to in Minnesota, Minnesota parenting leave. That did not used to apply on day one. It applied not until somebody had been working there for a year. And it also didn't apply unless you had at least 21 employees. Parenting leave also has an accommodations component to it. So that's on here because I want to mention it. What the parenting leave statute says is you have to allow leave for somebody that's becoming a parent or has become a parent, but also that same statute covers leave for pregnancy medical issues. So if someone they only get a total of 12 weeks, and I'm trying to show this, hopefully that's clear on here. 12 weeks is the amount of parenting leave that you get. This goes, I'm using months, so through April, if they started at January 1st. It's only for 12 weeks, and that is the amount of time they can take if they are, let's say they're on bed rest for pregnancy. That counts. So that counts as part of the 12 weeks. Then they have the baby. They may run out, they might, because if they need more time after the baby's born, they might run out of that kind of leave. But no problem, there's so many other versions of leave here that I bet you'll be able to find a way to fill in the blanks. But I put accommodations in here because the accommodation span of time that it could apply is 9 months or whatever is the time that they're pregnant. So I wanted you to see that on here. And that's the parenting leave. And by the way, the same rule applies to school conferences and activities leave. That one used to apply at 21 employees as well. Now it applies to every employer and every employee. So it fits under this umbrella of parenting leave. Okay. And are you having any questions about that? That one's in effect right now. The next one on here is called ESST, Employee Sick and Safe Time, it's called. Starts January 1st, 2024, so it's not in effect yet. It covers 48 hours, so 48 hours of leave, and that leave accrues while the employee is working for you. So they accrue 1 hour of leave for every 30 hours that they work. And this is the leave time that you may find that you can coordinate with your current paid time off plan. So your paid time off plan may not cover the broad span of types of need for a leave that ESST does. But if you correctly identify, for example, in your handbook, what I would say is it covers blank, 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 whatever you choose, plus anything that is covered by ESST, so that you can cover yourself. And when I said the Department of Labor just made a change, I don't know if they made a change or if they just told us about it, but when I pulled up their website on Monday, I was pleased to see it says that if somebody is gone for 48 hours, that you don't need to know why, you can just apply your PTO to that 48 hours, and that's all you need to do. So you don't have to keep two different running totals of ESST and PTO, you don't have to have them report to you the reason why they're taking the time off. You can just apply your PTO to that time if you have a policy that would cover it. And I have another slide specifically on it, but that's what this is about. This is brand new. It's being regulated by the Department of Labor and Industry. On the slide, I have a link to it, and on your handout, there's a website address. That I couldn't link obviously in your handout, but it's there, and I'll show you when I pull up the link here when we get to that page. You have any questions about this? I bet you've been thinking about this one, right? Trying to figure out what to do, how to match it up. But it should be good news that actually you can concurrently run PTO and this leave. This leave will get used up first, right, 48 hours. And then you'll be moving on to other types of leave, PTO, for example. This leave is paid, by the way. This is the only one, other than the one that starts in 2026, that's paid. So there could be pay, and that's the reason why we have this overlap page on the back of the other handout that I'm just going to show you in a minute. I have put disability accommodations in here because disability discrimination accommodations start pre-employment. Applicants have a right to accommodations. And one type of accommodations that I really see a great deal of with my clients is, and very frequently, time off. So they get a doctor's note that says such and such has a disability, needs XYZ amount of time off. So I'm including that here because that is a type of time off to take into account. If you're stacking these up and trying to figure out who's going to be gone when. The disability accommodations does apply to every employee to the extent that state law provides for that. Federal law doesn't. Federal law starts at 15 employees. But for state law purposes, you need to assume if somebody comes in, and by the way, the new pregnancy and nursing mothers components of the pregnancy law really are very generous about time off. In fact, the nursing mothers pregnancy accommodation statute now says that one of the types of accommodations you may need to make is time off. And that you have very little leeway to pressure the employee for a doctor's note about that either. So keep it in mind. It's one of the types of time off I thought belonged on this chart because I know it belongs, it does because it starts on day one too. So you could have somebody interview for a job, start the job 2 days later, go on leave the next day. That is possible now, the way this landscape is set up. Okay. And then moving on to the one that starts in 2026. You may not have focused much on that one yet, but that is a paid family leave type of time off that is up to 20 weeks in a year. 20 weeks in a year. It's a family medical type time off type. The thing that worries me about it is, I think it looks to me like an attempt to create a Minnesota version of the Family and Medical Leave Act, which is a federal law. Family and Medical, how many of you are subject to the Family and Medical Leave Act? So you know that it's tricky to comply with that. And it's been in effect since 1994. Frankly, the Department of Labor has been trying to learn how to comply with it themselves since 1994. So what the state government here did is they established a new department that is going to run this paid family and medical leave type of leave. It's a part of the Department of Economic or DEED that runs unemployment. So I'm imagining legislators probably thought, okay, well, DEED knows how to set up these accounts. So this is paid leave where you will charge the employee for part of the cost of it, and you will pay the other part of the cost of it, and it will all go into a fund at DEED, and DEED will pay it out when the employee makes a request. That's how it's going to set up. The problem is that whether the employee's request is valid, whether it meets the requirements of the law, what forms have to be filled out, that all has yet to be set up. And it all has yet to find out who's going to actually be running it. I'm worried about that because I know that the Department of Labor, which is in this business, has had a tough time getting FMLA functional. And so I think that employers will be tripping over this. The reason, I've got a slide over, because you have a few responsibilities before January 1st, 2026. The reason we're using this 2026 date is that is the first date when an employee can actually get benefits from this and actually can take this leave. So. And then at the bottom, FMLA, which is now my favorite law, believe it or not. I used to say, oh, the ADA is a piece of cake compared to the FMLA. Okay, but now the FMLA is on here, and it's for employers of at least 50 employees, which is reasonable, in my opinion. That if you're going to have this law, then have it for an employer that can accommodate it. Do you have any questions just going through this? And because we're going to next look at the summary guide.
So this PFML,
Yeah,
and you say that that's for how many hours?
that is for 20 weeks.
20 weeks, okay.
20 weeks.
Is that stacked on top of these other ones?
Yeah.
So they can do their 48 hours of
ESST.
ESST, and then they can go on this,
They could keep going.
you keep going beyond that.
Yeah. That's why I've got it stretching out so far, because, it could stretch out, or could. These aren't going to stretch out if the employee doesn't qualify for the leave. The question I have is how these employees do qualify, and whether there's somebody actually going to be good at managing it, because they aren't going to get that PFML leave unless they do qualify. And who's going to decide that is this new department that's being started up at unemployment, which is, who knows?
So you had mentioned that the employee is going to pay for part of that, and the employer is going to, is that a voluntary thing on behalf of the employee then, or?
It's an amount that the state will charge every employer, and you have the option of requiring the employee to pick up 50%. The state will figure out the cost. You are responsible for all of it, and then the employee, you can transfer half of it over to the employee as a withholding on their paychecks. By the way, I've seen this almost identical twin to this in California and the state of Washington and Illinois. So now, I don't think of Minnesota as being a twin of those states, but I'm starting to think about it that way because these laws are looking a lot like the laws that are in those other states.
And have they figured out how to manage it?
Well, do you think California has figured anything? I mean, the longer it sits there and the more these claims come in, they're all going to get worked through, but you do not want to get into the middle of some court proceeding trying to figure out if you're right or wrong about the way that you did this, right? You need certainty. That's one of my gripes about this. I think it's, you need some leeway, certainty. I don't have any employers that I know that don't want to comply. Everybody is going to try to. It's just that it will be easy to make mistakes, and that's why I'm here, because I want to be sure that you at least know what those could be. Any other questions about this colored sheet? Because if not, let's just look. I want you to see what I put in the summary guide here. So more things than time off laws were decided by the legislature. The summary guide covers everything. So it covers the changes to the Minnesota Human Rights Act and the non-compete law, the new ban on non-competes, and some other things. But the things that I'm focusing on today that I think are the greatest risk for you are the time off laws, and that's why you think. On the back is the overlap chart. And I think this might be useful. I'm hoping it will be useful for you. So if we just go across on this chart, it shows applicable to which employers, to which employees, and what are the possible uses of it Is it paid or unpaid? How much maximum leave? How much time does it accrue before they can use it? When does the use start? And what can it overlap with? And I think if you keep this, you may find it useful as you're trying to figure out, okay, does it overlap? Because I'll tell you, I have spent hours making sure this is right. I think it is true that this is right. And so, for example, let's take one. So let's take the Minnesota New Parenting Leave Act. So that applies to, parenting provisions. It is unpaid unless it runs concurrently with something else that is paid. ESST, for example, is paid. So it runs concurrently for 48 hours with that. Every employee gets that. If your PTO policy, by the way, has any little openings in it where there's certain employees where it doesn't apply to them, or certain work they do where it doesn't. I have one client that was not allowing PTO to accrue overtime. Okay, so that wouldn't be okay under ESST. I mean, you just have to go through, figure out little glitches there might be in there. Or I have a client that doesn't apply PTO to seasonal employees, or doesn't let employees be eligible for PTO until they've been there XYZ hours. Or they can be eligible, but they can't start taking it until. And if you do decide to match up your paid time off policies with this ESST, you have to make sure that your paid time off policies are at least as good as ESST requires. And so that is in every detail. But ESST can run concurrent with this parenting. It overlaps with that paid family and medical leave whenever that gets here in 26. And it runs concurrently with the FMLA and any paid time off you have available. So the FMLA, those of you that are subject to FMLA, you know that what you're trying to do is use it up, right? You are hamstrung till it is used up. So you don't want to let time that would be eligible for FMLA pass without accruing it at the same time. In fact, the Department of Labor's view on this is the FMLA is so valuable to employees, you will be penalized if you don't accrue FMLA when it's available. So keep that in, that accrues runs concurrently with this parenting leave. The one that, so you can look across and see, does anybody have any questions? I want to just talk for a minute about the uses of these leaves. Just this morning I was talking to somebody that said, okay, we want to run ESST concurrently with our sick leave. Is that okay? And I said, well, it could be, but ESST has broader purposes and is more applicable, than just your sick leave. And it's true. In order to make that, I think they're going to switch to a PTO plan where it covers everything so they don't have that problem. But if you look here under the employee earned sick and safe time list of what it covers, it's the employee's own health, family member health, workplace closure, domestic violence, inability of someone else to work. I don't have listed here all of the people who fall into the employee's family, but you'd be surprised if you heard them. I mean, it's a huge, long list, and in addition to it is the employee once a year can designate somebody else. So they can add a new family member for themselves, and if that person has a domestic violence crisis and has to go to court, your employee can take his time to go there with them, and it's an entitlement. So
in the first part of this, it says in here means blood relative. So is that more encompassing than what the Minnesota FMLA currently covers, which is about everybody and your dog, but is it more than that, like your aunts and your uncles and your cousins and?
Yeah, are you on the other part? That's
Let's look at the bigger side.
Let's look at the ESST on this other page. Yeah, it is broader. It is cousins, it is grandchildren of cousins, I mean, you name it, it is way out there.
Blood relative is literally blood relative. Anyways.
Right. And again, it says, one other person designated annually by the employee. Which I think, I don't know. What I really think is that nobody in the legislature was talking to any legislators over there about small businesses. There couldn't have been. There couldn't have been if they had, maybe 3M can do this, it won't be too big a problem. I just think it's going to be a big problem for most. Yeah.
I wonder, did they not consider healthcare? I mean, we just got out of COVID. This will shut healthcare down in many areas.
Because so many people will be gone.
No, there's such a shortage
Oh,
that they're barely getting by.
okay.
And I mean, and so when you're running 24/7 and you have an incredible shortage for the professionals that you need,
Yeah.
this is close to insanity.
Yeah, I know. I think so too. And I have, I'll tell you, I have quite a few clients that I have actually said to them, do not go up to 50 employees because you'll never be able to manage FMLA. One is a medical clinic, so that's what they want to be. Because they wouldn't, they don't have backup people, and they also don't have admin. They don't have enough sophisticated admin or admin people to manage all that time, and keep all those lists, and know if everybody's used up their time, etc. But now, here we are. We're stuck with 50 employees doesn't count at all anymore. So we are in new territory. And I just will tell you that some of these types of time off, I think, are pet projects. They have been pet projects for some legislators. The reason I say that is because they match almost exactly up with types of time off that are available in other states that seem to be models for what some people choose for Minnesota. I think that's why we have this, but I think it should be inapplicable in Minnesota. Do you have any other questions about the specifics here?
So in January, when some of these laws begin, are employers required to let employee knows about these benefits?
Yes, notice requirements. I will show you that in a minute. So the Department of Labor and Industry is responsible for making you aware of all these requirements and for providing sample notices that you can use and making lists of those. They have produced a few notices. They have produced one that you'll be able to use for parenting leave. And for PSST, they have a brochure. I'm going to pull it up on the computer over here in just a minute.
So are they distributing those to employers, or are employers just
They're on the
supposed to know?
website. They're on your website.
Oh,
Yeah. And that's why I thought you might want copies of my slides because my slide has the link in it. But on the other hand, the bottom of this sheet has the address of that link in it too. But let me show it to you. So is my next slide ESST? Let's see here. I have signed myself out again. I've signed Kevin out. All right, let's look at this ESST now. So you can slide it inside PTO. And what it actually says in the Department of Labor website is if they don't use it for the ESST purposes, but they burn it all at the beginning, then they don't get it anymore. So in fact, it says for you to not even ask for the reason why you're taking the leave. So that makes a big difference. I mean, when I was teaching this 2 weeks ago to this group of lawyers, we didn't know the answer to that question. Everybody's trying to figure out how they're going to keep extra lists, et cetera. One of the things about, by the way, that I didn't mention about ESST and also paid family leave is that has to be on people's pay stubs starting January 1st. So I don't know if your pay stubs are reporting this info or not, but it has to report the amount that was used in that pay period that's accrued and still available. It has to be on everybody's pay stub. So I think some payroll companies are going to be good at this, some aren't. But you're going to have to get ready for it because it starts January 1st.
On that question, I'm very fortunate to work for a company that salaried employees or short-term disability starts from day one, it's paid at 100%.
I can't hear you. What?
I'm very fortunate to work for a company that for salaried employees, our short-term disability starts on day one and pays 100%.
Oh,
So we don't have to have that on their pay stub then, correct? If we're technically already accommodating that under our short-term disability policy?
you know, it would be safer to have it, just to show the time that was available and the time that's accrued and used. At least if they still have it available at the end of a payroll period, put it on there that it's available still. I'm in favor of safety because I don't know who's going to challenge you on this. I don't know if the departments are going to challenge you, if an employee that's disgruntled is going to be looking for trouble, or what's going to exactly happen here. All right.
So we would have a column for ESST and a column for PTO.
You could, if you have them combined in terms of how you're providing ESST, then you could just have PTO on there. That's a question we had 2 weeks ago, but now we don't because we got new info, which is good. All right, so yeah, so the PTO has to be as good as ESST. I just put a little list here about what it has to have. Reported on the pay stubs. All right, now, I want to show you this ULI link. That also covers notices, so let me just go here to that link. I got this open earlier. All right, so when you go to their department website, if you look under for business and then employment practices, they've got a list of things. And let's just, for the fun of it, we'll go to earn sick and safe time, since our favorite topic of the day. This is a list of information about it. And when you get to the bottom of this page, keep going because FAQs are really important here, and that is where the new information is that I just found. That information also will help you if, I don't know how many of you are employers who front load your paid time off. Does anybody do that, or is it all accrued for everyone here? The client, yeah, okay, so the client I was talking to this morning front loads it. So they're trying to figure out, okay, if we front load it, then what? And there are rules on front loading, and they're in this FAQ list. Okay, so you need this link, and you need to be going to this page and just checking it from time to time. And this page also is where you would go to go back and look for information, for example, about the parenting leave. So it actually has a sample notice here on parenting leave. Paid, oh, that's paid, yeah. Sick and safe. Pregnancy and, okay. Sorry, this is slow. Here's nursing mothers and pregnancy. That's one of the things you have to give them notices on. And they have sample notices in here for you. Pregnancy accommodation, nursing mothers and lactating. I suggest that you hunt through here and you find their copy of notices and you just use them. Don't reinvent the wheel, but put something in your handbook first. I mean, get it into your handbook. Even if they don't have it in their hand or they can't find it online or whatnot, just get it into your handbook first. It shouldn't be hard to do. I've been really modifying a lot of handbooks, I'll tell you. And you know, some policies are easier to modify than others, but the thing is that you just need it in there. It's kind of awkward trying to go through this while you're here, but, so I'm gonna go back to the, I think I should be able to get back to my slides here. Kevin's coming to help me. I think, where's PowerPoint right here? Oh, we're back. We're back on slide 1. Thank you. And we are going to run out of time. So the next slide is about notices. My information on it is still the same. Go to that DOLI, hunt through there. And there are some, they have some now. They're responsible for creating them all. So hopefully they're going to get that pulled together before you, as long as you need it. It'd be best if I went on a trip too. And, the next slide is on record keeping. And so you do have to keep records of these. You have to be prepared in case an employee or the government asks you to show, what's been going on. Have you provided this leave? What I think is normally an employee is not going to challenge you on this unless they're mad about something else. So now they're mad about something else. They went and got advice, and now everything's being reviewed. So, but I think it's important to get it right. The wage theft notice is that form that you give them when you hire a new employee, and you list all their employment terms. That has to include all of the paid a list of all the paid time off you have available. So put ESST and paid family medical leave on that. Not paid family medical yet, but ESST. Put that on. Start putting that on there, and then put the information on the pay stubs. And the other thing is, for paid family leave, the first thing you have to do, you're going to be responsible to do, is July 1st, 2024. You have to give them a quarterly wage detail report. I haven't found any information about what that is, but it's in the statute and it's in the requirements, so we need to keep our eye on it. I think DEED would be the website to go to for that, because they are going to be responsible for paid family leave. They're going to, see, they're set up to collect all that wage detail because they manage unemployment. And I'm sure that's why the legislature thought they were perfect for this. I don't know that I think they're perfect for this, because I know that this needs somebody that is going to actually understand these types of time off and how employees are eligible or not, but we'll see. And then your first premium, they're calling it premium payments, so that's the cost of providing that insurance. Mandatory for you, and you can transfer 50% of the cost to the employee on their paychecks. In California, I think they transfer it all on the paychecks. I think we've talked about this. I just want to have a slide about it. The risks that I think you have too many employees on leave. Your big risks are staffing. Too many employees, inadequate notice of the leave. By the way, courts, I don't know that I've ever seen a single court decision where if an employer made a decision because an employee failed to comply with their notice requirements for leave, for time off, for an absence, for any kind of time off, the courts always go with the employer notice. Believe it or not, employers always win on that. So one of the recommendations I have for you is go through and make sure yours are good enough. I've seen a lot that aren't. I've seen a lot that say, just be sure to give notice to your supervisor before you start your time off. If you're going to be absent, give notice to your supervisor. Well, I mean, what you really want them to say is, in this situation, you need to give this notice, and it needs to be to this person, and when it needs to be delivered. If you have that in there, courts will enforce it, I promise you. And so will these departments. But if you don't have that in there and you're kind of flying by the seat of your pants trying to be nice to the employee, you're going to be at a disadvantage, I think. And let's go to what to do now, because it's almost 2:30. So update the handbook, harmonize ESST, PTO, parenting, and FMLA, right? You've got to get your head wrapped around, just get in a room with other people that have to work on this with you and figure it out. Wage theft notice, send out notices. I think be careful of your hiring and onboarding. Keep in mind that people can be gone the day after you hire them for these leaves. You need to know who you're letting in the door. Who are these people? You aren't going to really have any, you may not have enough time to onboard them to even get them into the fold. So that's why, in my opinion, it is more important than ever that you are careful in your hiring. And tighten the absence notice policies. Of course, I'm out of time. I'm happy to answer any questions. We don't have time for me to do it right this minute, but we'll stay around and answer questions. And if anybody wants copies of the slides, maybe you could tell Kevin, and then we could make sure that you get those. Thank you.